Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Center of Excellence for Infant and Early Childhood Mental Health Consultations Conference, Equity from the Start. My name is Sherry Heller, and I will serve as your session facilitator. And I'm joined by our tech host, who will also be helping us out in case we have any issues. This session is being recorded, and the transcription will be available through the Zoom. The transcription is available through the Zoom platform. Should you have any questions, please feel free to relay your questions in the chat. And also, if you have questions for Rob, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and he'll ask you to unmute. He's open to people asking questions throughout the presentation. We want to let you know before we begin that the views, policies, and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect SAMHSA or HHS. That said, I look forward to passing it over to Rob, who will be conducting today's workshop.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for that introduction. Welcome everyone who joined with us today. I'm excited to be here with you all to share this time with you on the topic of reflective supervision, something that I'm intimately aware of, both as a supervisor and as a supervisee. So I'm hoping that our time together will be meaningful for all of us, and we could actually kind of share some knowledge and information, and maybe walk away a little differently than when we came in. I'm going to begin by sharing my slide with you all. And if you can just give me a thumbs up, we'll start our feedback and engagement if you are seeing the slide window. So thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Seth. Hopefully I'll see more people on my screen. Let me expand this here and get my chat box ready. And I see virtual thumbs up as well. Awesome. You guys are ready to engage. You're ready to go. Oh, so hi, my name is Robert Harris. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I currently work with Georgetown University with the Center for Child and Human Development, Head Start. When I submitted this presentation, I was actually a part of the District of Columbia's Department of Behavioral Health's Healthy Future, a consultation program. Super excited to have worked with them and work in that capacity. I learned so much in the role of a consultant. And then I also had the privilege of being a supervisor during that time. So I'm actually sitting in multiple seats when I consider and present this presentation with you all. And we're going to talk about building reflective capacity, just via kind of hands or emojis. How many of you have engaged in reflective supervision in some way, shape, or form, whether you have been a supervisee, whether you've been a supervisor? Okay, see a couple of hands. Sherry, seeing your hand go up is kind of both like interesting and funny. Like, I know who I'm speaking with here. See a lot of thumbs up. Awesome. So we all have some connection with this in some way, shape, or form. Before we get into any of that nitty gritty, I'm just going to give a brief overview of our time together today. We'll have a check-in, which we're about to do. Then we'll define reflective supervision for all of us, for all of our understandings. We'll branch into reflective capacity, and then we'll move right into the meat of this, Johari's window. Johari's window, and I'll share briefly about why I think this is an important Johari's window as a tool. And then we'll get right into applications. So we'll have some breakout rooms, which will be awesome. We'll get to talk with each other, meet some new people. And then we'll look at what did we learn today? And then we'll have room for a Q&A at the end. Johari's window. Before we get into all that, it's been a really interesting couple of weeks. If you want to go zoom out, it's been a really interesting couple of years. So I'm always looking for reasons to make us smile and to just laugh and reflect on the good things. So please put in the chat, what's something that brought you joy in the last few days, or something you're looking forward to, right? Something you're looking forward to, or something that brought you joy. I'd love to read a couple of these things. Someone's getting now I'm already, I want a new puppy too. That's awesome. Playing a ukulele. A new dog, Cuddlebug. I got to read quickly, huh? FaceTime with the grandson, great grandkids, wonderful. Someone's going to Spain. I saw hiking. This is moving really quick. Someone from out of town for Halloween, camping, son's basketball season. Someone's going to have their granddaughter for overnight. That's both good for the grandma and for the parents. I know that through experience, so that's awesome. A little nephew there, surprise party. Look at all these things. And if you see something that you resonate with, please give it an emoji, like it, or engage with it. I'm wondering how that felt for everyone to just briefly reflect on something that has brought them joy, so that they're looking forward to an opportunity to kind of separate from all the stuff that surrounds us day to day. So it's exciting. New car. Who doesn't love the new car smell? Oh, it's just a really, really good smell to have. New car, wonderful. Um, Thank you all for leaning into that. Grand over sleepovers. Yes, I love the engagement. You guys, let's keep this energy going for the whole thing. Um, Reflective supervision. So a lot of thumbs up. So a lot of people talk about they've engaged with it in some capacity. And as I shared, I've had the privilege of being a supervisee and a supervisor. And if you have had the same privilege, right, being on both sides of it, hopefully you've leaned into some things that you've learned, and particularly when it comes to infant and early childhood mental health consultation, we know that reflective supervision is one of the ways we encourage individuals to remain connected to the work, um, as well as reflect about how they're showing up in the spaces for families and children. And if you're so privileged to engage in this practice, even with teachers or parents in some way, shape, or form, you know that it can be an incredibly useful tool. Well, I'll be honest, one of the things I started to reflect on when I became a supervisor in reflective supervision was like, am I doing this right? Has that resonated with anyone else? You can say in the chat, you can give me a thumbs up. Has it any resonated with somebody where they ask themselves, am I doing this right? um, you enter into the space, you're thinking, okay, they're going to ask me some questions, or maybe they don't ask any questions. They sit and say, tell me what you feel. And you're like, well, is this a good feeling to share, or is not a good feeling to share? Or, what are they looking for? Depending on where you come from in your background, you may be considering about other spaces where it wasn't reflective at all. It was more just about supervision, what you needed to do, what you didn't need to do, what you were doing well, what you weren't doing well. And so you get into the reflective supervision space, and there may be a little bit of I don't want to say concern, but some anxiety and some worry. And I want to be honest, I felt that way as a supervisor more so than anything else, because I'm encouraged to open this space up for those who I'm supervising so that they feel safe enough to reflect on the work and engage in ways that are meaningful, which is what prompted this discussion today. And so as we go forward, I want to be clear when I present this and share this and we speak about this together. It's from the idea of, I wonder if there could be more to help everyone lean into the reflective supervision, because so many of us here have said that we felt a little concerned or worried or uncertain about what to do. And so maybe we can go about this in slightly different ways. So let's ground ourselves in reflective supervision. Again, this is a practice. If you have any thoughts, I'm looking for raised hands if anyone wants to add to anything that I'm talking about or we're talking about today. Or again, please utilize the chat. I will do my best to keep my eyes on that as going forward. So reflective supervision, right? 0 to 3 talks about reflective supervision as having I'm sorry, not having anything, but that mental health has a direct impact on the social emotional development on children, right? Like, and if you're in this conference, you're aware of that in some way, shape, or form, as a partner, as a direct engager, someone interested in it, you know that children's mental health matters. It's also true that reflective practices can really help all of us, every one of us, pay attention to the way we show up and how the way we show up impacts families. It specifically allows us to pay attention to the personal feelings and the subjective experiences that we have. All that to be said, in my own words, I'm just like, how am I showing up in the space today? How is it influencing the work that I'm doing? And is there anything I might need to do adjust, to do more of, to do less in, lean back and reflect on? Because all of what I do, all of what we do, all of what we do together impacts a child, a family, a center, and a community in some way. And that's why reflective supervision is so important. Continued, she's here, so I'm really honored to have her here. And I had to reach out to those who have been doing this work in different and meaningful ways for a little longer than I had. And I wanted to read this for you all because I found that this supervision really spoke, this definition of reflective supervision really spoke to me. And it's a relationship that aims at creating a climate where both the client's and the helper's needs are being considered so that the effectiveness of the intervention is optimized. I'm the kind of person that likes to repeat things to make sure it makes sense for me because that was powerful. A relationship that aims at creating a climate where both the client's and the helper's needs are being considered so that the effectiveness of the intervention is optimized. It is a partnership in which the supervisee never feels alone, is not overwhelmed by fear or uncertainty, feels safe to express their fears, uncertainties, thoughts, feelings, reactions. It requires a foundation of acceptance and trust that is characterized by safety, calmness, and support. And here it is, in order to create an environment where people do their best thinking. Looking for any reactions. Does that resonate with anyone in any way? I first read it and I said, that should be in more books. That should be what everyone says the moment they are either a supervisee, they hear, or the moment they're a supervisor. A lot of yes, yes, stars. Yeah, highlights the relationship. And I really love that the opening, it talks about two important parties in this situation. The client could be a family, could be a center, could be a teacher, but also the person helping them, right? They have to, both individuals have to be able to show up, or both individuals have to be able to feel, I don't want to say their power, their presence in the space, because they're going to be impacted by what happens. And I think that's super meaningful. And to love to hear things like never feels alone. I don't know if anyone's been in a reflective space and has felt exactly that, felt alone, maybe disconnected, right? And we talked about the potential fears and uncertainties that we all had in the space. Like, am I doing it right? Um, and then because of that, maybe not being sure about how to show up and what to say. I thank you, Sherry, for sharing this definition with me because again, I think it resonated, and it seems like other people have resonated with it as well. So reflective supervision is a really important tool. It's really important for all of us to lean into. But there's the thing, though, right? I am curious. The key to reflective supervision is the ability to reflect. And so I'm really curious. I want to take a quick poll. You can say, I do, I'm uncertain, yay. Does everyone know how to reflect? Is that something that everyone knows how to do? I'm curious. Is it like, what are your thoughts, community? Do we think, all right, I see a couple yeses. I'm going to probably take a good visual poll depending on this. Use the chat. All right, I see a couple sometimes is leading out. All right, yeses. Yes. Having the space helps. All right, somebody's adding too. I think so. Still, oh, someone says still learning. Appreciate the self-disclosure. Willingness to share in this space. Always room to learn. Reflection is hard because it makes us vulnerable. Absolutely. Oh, hold on. I need to highlight that. I'm going to just highlight this for everyone if you're seeing things in the chat here. Thank you, June. There are varying levels of reflective functioning. How I feel can influence my ability to reflect. Someone says depends on the context. So I'm seeing a general sense that everyone here believes that reflection is something that everyone can do, right? I'm also hearing people now shape it around context. And I think we're all right. I agree. Reflecting is something that everyone can do. The thing is, because we can do it, do we know how? And when you enter into reflective space, what does that look like? And I see someone here, I can fall in and out of the reflective stance when under stress. Love that. And you think about the individuals who engage in this work, we presume that most of them will have a mental health background or have extensive background with kids or some kind of experience with the idea of development, human development, child development. So because of that, maybe they have an experience with the idea of self-awareness or reflection. You know, but I was curious as a supervisor, is that true? Do I make that assumption? You see here reflective supervision again emphasizing the idea that it can nourish relationships because it, for example, allows us to engage in the parallel process, right? And it also has the opportunity to expand our reflective capacity. Reflective capacity. So there was the guys answered the question all correctly. Reflective capacity. That term essentially means that all of us, right, have the ability to reflect. All of us have the ability to reflect. It is something that we all have capacity for. It's also defined as the ability to understand and interpret and find meaning in behavior, both in ourselves and others. Um, it allows us to address our roles and feelings in our supportive relationships. Again, that's the well-written definition I like to say. Our reflective capacity is our ability to see how we show up. I would say it's synonymous with being self-aware. Now, for all of us who have been supervisors specifically, if you have been a supervisor or you have facilitated a reflective space, have you ever engaged in the practice? And internally, because you are a healthy and you are a well-rounded practitioner, you would never say this out loud. But have you ever thought to yourself, I'm not entirely sure if this individual knows how to reflect? Like they're not getting it. Maybe if you feel like the self-disclosing is going to reveal too much of you, I'll say I have been. There's been my internal thought. Didn't say it out loud. I took it to the safety of my own supervisor, but I really questioned and wondered. I don't know if they can really engage in this process. Like I don't know if they know how to reflect. And so, oh, someone says absolutely. Then you become curious. I love that shifting into a stance of curiosity really opens us up. And that's awesome. Someone else was saying that they've seen people struggle with reflection, but hold the belief that the capacity can be grown. I'm going to say I've been curious myself, and I've seen a bit of resistance to the process. Because as people are putting in the chat, and we can all probably attest to, or some can attest to reflect is to be vulnerable, right? To be vulnerable with someone whose relationship may in itself be very contextual, right? To be vulnerable with your supervisor who you're only in this relationship with because you work with them and they have a particular role. Or with a teacher or with a family member, whomever, because this is the work that you do. And so to potentially, oh, so who's looking ahead of my slides? Who's looking ahead of my slides? Um, to be reflective and to be vulnerable in this space with someone can be really challenging. In the cases of supervisors and supervisees, this person may hold the power over your work and your role. In the case of a family, right, or a teacher, this individual may be looking at you and thinking to myself, well, what are you going to bring back to the director? What are you going to bring back to X leader or mentor or whatever that is? And so it can be really hard. If you shift stance, I'll self-disclose and say, when I think about the times and the things that I've kept hidden, that I've kept to myself, it's been totally about the comfort. And if I want to stretch myself, I've actually felt that the supervisor has been incredibly um, open. They've done their best to make the space feel safe. It's just things that I knew about myself, things that I was aware of that made it hard to lean in. And so, I was a bit resistant to reflect because I didn't want to be vulnerable. Um, oh, I like that comment there. Thank you, Peggy. Some supervisees see it as being judged versus vulnerable. Absolutely. It's a human thing. We want to protect ourselves from feedback and disclosure because we're not entirely sure how someone else will utilize it, considering the world that we live in. So I think we all have an understanding of reflective capacity. We all have an understanding right now of how it may not be something that everyone is willing to lean into or everyone comes into the space. Maybe knowing how to do, which is why, and someone, who is it? I really want to pronounce that incorrectly. Melly got ahead of us. Johari's window. Give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with Johari's window in any way, and however you may have come across it. Just give me a thumbs up if you're familiar with Johari's window. Oh, not a lot of thumbs up here. Okay. Oh, I see one or two. Thank you, Seth. I see you there visually. Thumbs up. Oh, this is awesome. Johari's window is an awesome resource and tool. Came across it in school myself, then later on in life as somebody was presenting on it. And as I had the privilege, and it really was a privilege as supervisor to consider those who are supervising, I really thought to myself, am I doing my best to make sure this space is safe for both of us and that we can get the most out of it? And my own reflections led me to consider how can I kind of create a groundwork, a foundation outside of the things that I know I can control to ensure that the space is meaningful. And Johari's window came to mind. Johari's window as a tool and a resource is one to help build self-awareness. And as you see here, it has 4 quadrants, it has 4 spaces. Um, you have the area, and you see here in your slides, right? Just want everyone to look into that. You have 4 spaces. You have the open, the blind spot, the hidden, and the unknown. And we'll lean into this a little bit more, but I want you to see that these different spaces are measured across 2 really specific dimensions. What's known to you, okay? Across the top, what's known to you? Things that you know about yourself and things that you don't know about yourself. That's what's known to you, right? That's where you fall into it. Then you have another section where it's about what's known to others. So things that other people know about you and things that other people may not know about you. Those are the dimensions, what's known to you and what's known to others. And these 4 windows fall into those dimensions. So let's get into a little detail about what these windows represent. The open area is what's known to you, what's known to others. You can consider this what you talk about in everyday life, right? What you feel, I should use the word, what you feel safe enough to talk about in everyday life. In considering the context of reflective supervision, that's how you doing? I'm fine. How's your day? Cool. Is it cold? You may talk about things like the weather and maybe family, like whatever you discuss are things that you feel safe enough to discuss. And so therefore they're in the open area. They're both known to yourself and known to the individual who you're speaking with. And so I dub that, we can also dub that the safe space. Entirely feel safe, right? If you're talking about it, you feel safe enough to, however that feels. Now, for some people, this window is really small, right? You may stick to the things that are easy to talk about: weather, commute, work. For others, it's pretty wide, right? You talk to somebody, you see them in the grocery store line, and all of a sudden you know about their full family history, and you know what they're doing for the weekend, and you're talking about what you're going to do for the weekend because it's a pretty open area for you. That's the open area. Then there's something called the blind spot. Okay, the blind spot. This is something that may be known, an area that's known to others, but may not be known to you. Okay. I will, as a presenter, I feel like I need to, kind of lead this and say a blind spot for me was, I want to say what's good one to use? I'll say my code switching. I'll say that was a blind spot for me. As a man of color, coming from some of the spaces that I was in, I wouldn't even realize how quickly I would code switch. And so people would bring it up, and I found myself being pretty defensive. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm being myself. I'm just speaking. And some individuals who may have seen me and known me in multiple spaces go, that's entirely true. But it'd be hard for me to receive because they were able to see it about me, but it wasn't quite known to me yet. That's the blind spot, okay? Other people can see it, but the individual, the subject, has difficulty bringing their attention to it. Ooh, oh, that spot makes me feel kind of overwhelmed. Thank you for sharing, Alicia. You're not alone. You're not alone. If no one else I know it's here for me, if anyone resonates with that statement, you can feel free to, give it an emoji, give it a like. Yeah, I think it is pretty overwhelming, that blind spot, right? What other people see about you? What other people know about you? And you can easily spiral into the space of like, well, self-consciousness, self-esteem, tons of things. So you can see how it can be a very, very challenging space to exist in. But you know what? There's a space that we have more control over, according to Johari's window. That's the hidden area. Okay, those are the things that we keep to ourselves. Those are the things that we know about ourselves, the things that are personal to us, but we don't necessarily feel comfortable sharing with others, so they don't know about it. Considering the space of reflective supervision, again, be self-disclosing. For example, there will be times that my supervisor would not know that the night before, because I had an infant, that I did not get more than 2 hours of sleep. And for whatever reason, they didn't feel safe sharing it. You can imagine how that may impact me showing up in the space. And that's something fairly safe. I have my reasons for not sharing it, or, in greater spaces, you may not know, something else that I've experienced. Or I had a car stolen and, was able to get to work anyway, but I didn't feel the need to go through the story. So I hold that to myself. The hidden area are things that you know about yourself, but for whatever reason, you don't feel comfortable sharing with anyone else. And then finally, there's that unknown space. Now, I think this space is also equally both terrifying and exciting. The unknown space is things that are both unknown to you and to others. Depending on how you approach the unknown space, could be really exciting or it could be really terrifying. Exciting if you take a stance of potential curiosity, like, oh, I wonder what could happen here. Terrifying if it's full of anxiety about, like, oh, I don't know what could happen here. And so the unknown space holds with it an abundance of potential. But these are the four windows that are talked about in Johari, Johari's window. And some of you have already started to do it, but when you consider this in the sense of reflective supervision, think about how this may expand your own understanding of the individual before you and their understanding of themselves and the space. Right? If you notice that your conversation tends to be pretty constrained, again, we talk about weather, work, commute, you might consider, okay, I don't know if wonder how comfortable they feel. And the open space, that is the opportunity for us to reflect on. Is it maybe how I'm showing up? I'm curious if there are some things that I'm doing. Ooh, sorry, y'all. I see something in the chat. Some of these are not even conscious. Isn't that the kind of scary part, but also really awesome to have the tool? Because sometimes we do these things instinctively. But the awesome thing about Johari's window is that we have an opportunity to bring ourselves into intentional awareness of these spaces, hopefully safely, both on the part of the supervisor and the supervisee. But I'm thinking about this tool, and I'm thinking to myself as a supervisor, when what we talked about, and I have someone that comes to mind, and I felt like we were always talking about the same things, right? Trying to push in terms of work, and same things, and we're in the open area, and it led me to think, I wonder what I don't know. I wonder what I don't know. I start there. I try to start there. I wonder what I don't know. I wonder if there's a hidden area. And it gives me an opportunity to just kind of be curious. Hey, I wonder if there's some things going on with you that I'm not aware of, and maybe how that's showing up for you. If you think about the individual who isn't as reflective as others, this is an opportunity for them to maybe internalize that question. Something comes up, it comes up. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But you have an opportunity for it to do. I'm going to put it back on you, the community here, and this is an opportunity to kind of take ourselves off mute really quickly. How might the hidden area, what kind of question might you be encouraged in the reflective space? And whether you want to take the stance of a supervisee or the supervisor, how might you utilize your understanding of the hidden area? If this tool was introduced in the reflective space, how might you utilize the hidden area, your understanding of it, to expand the reflective supervision space? Does anyone feel courageous enough to come off mute? I look for a raised hand. Again, if you feel more comfortable using the chat, feel free. But how much you use the hidden area? I see Camilla raised her hand. Camilla, feel free to take yourself off mute. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, comes to mind, I would be asking myself, what's at stake if I share this? What's at stake if nobody knows or hears this? And will they want to share this knowledge?
Camilla, I hope it's just me, but you're breaking up a little bit. And so I see a couple of nodding heads. I'm going to summarize what I did here, and the start of it was really powerful. The question that it led you to ask is, what's at stake if I share this? Oh, here you are. Are you back, Camilla? I think I see your face there, smiling. I'm sorry, we didn't capture all of that, but I will tell you, the start of that was pretty powerful. You ask yourself, like, what's at stake if I share this? Does that question resonate with anyone as a supervisee? When you think about that in there, I see a couple of nodding heads. Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to share how they might utilize their understanding of the hidden area? There you go. What's at stake if I share this? What will this person do with this knowledge? I'm just finishing up reading Camilla's thoughts. And after they know what happens, after they know what happens. Okay, I see two other hands. Hey, Katie. Thanks for raising your hand. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Please share your thoughts.
There we go. I was thinking what you just said about as a supervisee, and I guess I was also thinking about it as a supervisor, that I also feel like, I have hidden areas too, and I sometimes wonder about what areas to be vulnerable with in terms of like disclosure that might help me connect with my supervisees, and then what not to be. And so wondering again about like what would the impact be after that sharing too.
Mm. Katie, it sounds like you and June have similar thinkings. Um, because maybe this information doesn't need to be shared in the space, though you hope someone may consider if it's impacting the space overall. If so, how? And then what could be adjusted. I thank you both for sharing. Katie, thank you for sharing, and for June also for typing that out. It seemed like you guys were resonating um, right off the cuff. Does anyone else have, before we shift into another space, we'll do another test because we're going to apply this. We're going to get right to the nitty gritty of the work. I see another comment here by Seth, the instinct to be reflective without letting too much of our thinking show. Big with clinicians. Yeah. Yeah, sounds about right. If you have a background in social work, counseling, or anything that's related, yeah, sounds about right. What about, let's go to a tough one before we go into some breakout rooms. What about the blind spot? Everyone, any thoughts? How do you utilize maybe a shared understanding of the blind spot? What questions come to mind? How do you allow that to interrupt the space in a way that's meaningful? The blind spot and what we understand about it. Again, whether you take the stance of a supervisee or whether you take the stance of a supervisor. Is it because it's the tougher one? Yeah, thinking as a supervisor, how do I use this info to help them grow? Yep. Posing as a question to invite reflection. Alina, I'm curious what question you might pose. Oh, Sherry, I see your hand. Please. And I'll read some comments after.
Yeah, I always wonder as a supervisor, how how is the person gonna, keeping the safety, keeping the space safe and brave. How can it be presented in a way that it's seen as a growing edge, right? And is the person in a space where they're ready to hear it, or how can I get them or help them move to the space where they can hear it? Because I don't want to really kind of shut them down or kind of attract away. So there's always kind of, other ways to highlight it through experiences that they're sharing with me that may not be me directly, but beginning to wonder about patterns and that kind of thing. So always really thinking about how to present it in a way that's going to be helpful and heard, I think, in summary. It's a tough
Sherry,
one.
it sounds like you are reflecting another comment that I just read in the chat. Um, Katie shared along with you, and I see Alina, I'm going to go to you after this small moment, is that how much safety would need to be filled in order to really receive the blind spot feedback? So you were talking about it from a supervisor, how, being curious about, is the space safe enough for it to be given and to be received? And I think from a really reflective place, if this is a tool, someone may ask themselves, like, how much safety do I need to receive this feedback? And is it present? Oh, you guys are really engaging at this. Wonderful. I feel this is awesome. Alina, please, if you mind taking yourself off mute. Thank you, Sherry, for sharing your thoughts.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Yes, so to clarify what I had said about like posing it kind of as a question to invite more reflection, I think of it like, for focusing on like validating where that person might be coming from or like what they're expressing. And then like posing it as a question, like wondering with them, like I wonder if if it might be possible to, or if you've ever thought of it as being this way. So like offering it and then seeing how that person might sit with it. I've done this before with like well, I'm not a supervisor, but I do it a lot like with the parents of kiddos that I work with. And so when they're feeling frustrated with their child, like for example not listening to them or following through, I'll validate like where they're coming from and then invite them to wonder with me about like, I wonder if your child might be trying to express something to you in that moment. What do you think? And then that kind of helps them to see that blind spot, like, oh yeah, like maybe they wanted my to connect with me in that moment, rather than like, me thinking that they're doing this just to be defiant, so that's what I meant by that. Look.
Thank you so much for expanding and actually giving us a practical example of how that shows up for you in your work.
Sure.
It really is about validating and hearing her voice. I want to reiterate for all of you, I thank you so much for leaning in, and I kind of want to take a step forward because of what we're showing, and give an application and break into some breakout rooms. So I want to read this scenario, and I want to give room for independent thought and thinking. So if the scenario may not resonate with you, maybe in your group you can think of something that does, if someone wants to share. But I have one here for us. It says, you're conducting reflective supervision with a teacher. During an observation of nap time where a toddler had difficulty sleeping, you notice the teacher used harsh words towards the toddler. The teacher is noticeably frustrated and eventually just leaves the child to cry before the assistant teacher intervenes. You've discussed strategies previously in reflective supervision, yet haven't seen any progress. Supervision has been regular, and the teacher shares that they feel comfortable with you. How about utilize Johari's window to inform your reflection moving forward? Okay, let me say that one more time. You're conducting reflective supervision with the teacher during an observation of nap time where a toddler had difficulty sleeping. You notice the teacher used harsh words towards the toddler, and the teacher's visibly frustrated and eventually just leaves the child for someone else to deal with. You've discussed strategies, you've talked about it. Supervision has been regular, and the teacher feels safe to share with you. So how do you use Johari's window to inform your reflection? I'm going to ask our tech support if we can send individuals to breakout rooms. I'm excited to hear what the feedback and conversation is going to be from this. So let's give everyone about 5 minutes for this. Hopefully it should be about a minute apiece for people to share their thoughts, and we'll go forward. Is that me? Do I have to do the breakout rooms? Hold on, maybe. Persons just want to share what came up for them. So I'm going to say again, we have about 8 minutes of our time together. So I'm going to ask if one or two persons will be courageous enough to share, and others who can feel free to utilize the chat. What was that conversation was like? Maybe what came up? One or two persons, if be courageous enough to share audibly. Everyone can feel free to utilize the chat as well. What came up? Okay, I'm going to hold for a few moments. I'm looking at the chat if no one is feels. I know people are still joining the rooms, which is okay. Oh, it was a little challenging to not have the window in front of you. I'm so sorry. That's good to know. Well, I can bring it back up now, so I can share again. Maybe we can just do this together quickly. That's learning on my part. Here we go. Well, how about we utilize it now? I'm curious what everyone talked about. I hope you had a good conversation regardless. Good to learn. I'll make sure that everyone has this resource with them. Anyone want to share what they might, based on the window in front of them now, how they might respond? We can just do this all together. So here's the windows, but here's the breakdown of the areas. Well, someone said in their group, we talked about trust on behalf of the supervisor and supervisee. So trust being really integral to any type of share in any way. We all know that's foundational. Anyone else want to share? All right, we're going to maximize our time and maximize our efforts. So here we go. Ask a few questions whether this day feels like a typical day or unique. So someone said they would ask a few questions. How does today feel overall? Is it typical or unique? Going back to previous strategies. Do those feel useful or helpful? Hoping that brings some reflection. Okay, we have one-on-one discussion. Let's do one together. We have 5 minutes, and I think we can do this together really quickly. So how about this, right? You have to sit in and support a conversation between staff members. One of the teachers is on the verge of changing classrooms. This is the teacher's third classroom. As you listen, you feel as though there are some themes arising in the conversation. How can we utilize Johari's window for this? Sitting in on a conversation between staff members, or teachers on the verge of changing the classroom. Again, the third classroom. And as you listen, you feel like some themes are arising in the conversation. How do we utilize Johari's window to support this? You've been asked to sit in, okay? So you've been invited into the space. Okay, so Seth, you named the themes out loud, all right? For the person, that just sounds like you're pointing out all the things the other person's saying. Anyone else have any thoughts? Say someone said start with the observation. Do my best to read a couple. Again, you can feel free to raise your hand. We can take you off mute. Someone asks what is working and what is not in the current situation. Someone would wonder if the teacher's choice to change or the director's decision. Okay. See, this is where I think there are some presumptions we're assuming or making of the situation. And going back to Johari's window, the individual may not even be a space to accept or acknowledge that they're at fault in any way. And I don't know if any of us have seen that, right? The teacher just thinks it's another thing that's being happened. They displace the information. And so for me, Johari's window might see some of these things. Why are these changes happening? It's seemingly not. I love somebody to honor and just make sure to acknowledge the trust for being in that space. I might utilize Johari's window because it sounds like there may be, Sherry, I'm not even sure I want to use the word, there may be something unknown to the individual. Okay, so I may ask, I wonder if you've heard any of this before. Or just, I wonder if you've heard any of this before. Just that alone, right? I'm not saying if you believe it to be true or not, just I wonder if you've heard it before. And that may just open them up to consider, yeah, I've heard one or two people. And that could be an opening in a window into a space of, you have? What did that feel like? Right? You have tons of questions to ask. Or if you have heard it before, what was that like for you? What were the conditions? Because we assume that the person may be in a space to hear whatever it is and think they can make those connections. Seth, to your point, they may hear these themes and not just think that that's what you're saying. Even if you frame it on the idea of themes, which has the idea of this has come up a couple of times, it may just be what you're noticing. Very true, Katie. Yes. For my example, I was pointing out that there's a reason why they're changing. But yes, we know that happens often. So I thank you for pointing that out. Seth, I love that question. I wonder if you felt anything like this before. What did you do and what did you work? What can we change? That's one of those questions that utilizes the idea of an unknown space and open them up to explore. I have. Right. And so I want to be clear as I wrap up. I see I have 2 minutes left. I want to be clear that the point of Johari's window is to potentially provide a foundation of understanding for both the supervisor and the supervisee that doesn't make the assumption that someone's reflective capacity is as broad and as expanded as we want them to be. Right? Sometimes we presume that people have a Grand Canyon worth of reflection space when really they're still working on the small divot in the road. Right? And so what I had utilized, and I say my personal experience with Johari's window is I kind of went back to the basics and that didn't make any assumption about how self-aware, reflective any of my supervisees were, and just introduce it as hey, what do you guys think about this? Just the introduction of the tool itself opened people up. Because if they don't talk about it, it doesn't mean it's not something that they're not aware of. There may be reasons why they don't share. Now, this doesn't absolve any supervisor of their responsibility to ensure that the reflective space is safe, engaging, that the purpose of it is still about opening individuals up to see how they influence the people that they serve. It just takes away the assumption, and this is where I think it was equitable. It takes away the assumption that everyone's capacity is greater than it may be, and gives us all a foundation to work from. And so I'll jump to this. I wanted to just leave you all with this. At the center of it all, framed in compassion, viewed through window panes of hope, is the child, reflecting to the viewer the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Why reflective supervision matters, why we need to lean in and engage in it, is so that every child that we have the privilege of influencing in some way remains the focus and feels able to enjoy tomorrow. So thank you all for leaning in. I see our time is upon us, so I want to shift to question and answers. So thank you, please.
Thank you very much, Rob. That was a delightful workshop. I wish we had more time. We really appreciate you presenting, and thank you everyone who attended. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And we look forward to seeing you over the next 2 days as we continue on with our virtual conference. Everybody have a nice afternoon.